Welcome back to the Elise Surkov podcast, where we help women in menopause and perimenopause thrive unapologetically from the inside out. All right, let's jump in. What the gut is happening here in perimenopause and menopause? It is like all of a sudden, everything that you used to do doesn't work anymore, and all the foods that you are still eating that haven't changed don't sit the same. You're getting more gas, more constipation, diarrhea, bloating, feeling full, feeling gross. And you're just like, what the fuck is happening to my gut? All right. So I'm looking at my phone because I have a cheat sheet on my phone. This is the first, I should say, podcast where I've had to make notes so I don't forget. So if you're watching on YouTube and you see me kind of looking down, that is why I am in perimenopause and my brain can go every and which way possible. Okay. So let's get into it because likely if you've been listening or following along that you've heard me say that your gut microbiome has changed. Every little thing that is happening in your body is changing. Your hormones are changing. Your physiology is changing. Your gut is changing. And you're like, what the fuck? Who am I? I don't understand me anymore. You're getting frustrated. I hear it. I'm here to help you. All right. So when we look at what is happening in the gut, I want you to think of it as like habits and hormones, which I have talked about again. I have talked about in a previous podcast. I'll link that below so you can find it. But there are two things that are happening, and it's mostly going to be coming from that hormonal side on this one. So I can say, like, go ahead and let's blame hormones for this one. So we look at two very important hormones, these twin sisters. We've got progesterone and estrogen that are quickly changing. So progesterone is the first hormone that starts to fall, and then estrogen follows after. And estrogen and progesterone both have a lot of effects on the actual gut. So when we look at estrogen, and again, I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible. Estrogen is that hormone that really helps with gut motility. So maintaining the smooth muscle tone in the intestines. So think of it as like everything is fucking flowing through and out of your butt really well. And so when estrogen starts to fall, because progesterone started to fall, we're going to see that transient time is a little bit slower. So things take a little bit longer to go through. So you might be pooping less, or it might be harder to poop because those smooth muscles in the intestine are just not really pushing things as quickly through as they used to. The other thing that's happening is because estrogen is like a pain protector, having estrogen makes us handle pain more, hence why we are the lucky ones to give birth, right? We have a higher threshold for pain, and that's why because of childbirth, and that's from estrogen. So as estrogen starts to fall, then we start to increase this like hypersensitivity everywhere. So we start feeling things more, and then we start reacting on them more. So that stress factor kicks in a little bit faster. Estrogen helps support barrier function of the gut. So this is where we seem to see like that leaky gut happening. And I can talk more about that on another podcast because we're getting right into it on that. And then what we also see is progesterone falling. So that is, think of like as estrogen, again, as that protection, and we're losing it. So things just aren't starting to kind of go through, and we feel things more, and you might notice more constipation or just slower motility overall. And I mean, that is really frustrating. So that like feeling of fullness. All right. So now, once progesterone starts to plummet fast, I will also say, let me just pause, is that estrogen and progesterone are fluctuating more now than ever. All right. So, like, we're going to see this rapidly change overnight. So, it's like all of a sudden, everything feels very different. And this is what you might feel. You might feel like, oh my God, all of a sudden, I don't feel like I'm myself anymore. And, like, funny enough, at the recording of this video, so today is April 24th, 2025, and I am really struggling with gut issues. Like, this is the worst my gut's been, I think, ever. I'm on day like 11 now. It's been horrible. And a lot of that has come from a mix of SIBO, which I'll talk about, and then also, oh my God, low stomach acid, which I'll talk about. So when progesterone falls and then leaves estrogen high, we're going to also have symptoms that's going to affect everything, like breast tenderness, more diarrhea, like everything's going to kind of change. Or, then if we have lower estrogen relative to progesterone, or they're kind of closer together, you might have like a lot of vaginal dryness. So like everything is starting to change at once, and it might flip flop very quickly. So especially in perimenopause, such a long phase, you might be like, I still have normal periods, but I'm getting these fluctuations. And this is what's happening. Okay, so let's go back to progesterone now. So we talked about estrogen. So in when progesterone starts to fall, and it falls very rapidly, then you're going to have this kind of unpredictability, if you will, of motility of the entire GI tract. So, and when we look at the GI tract, it's from mouth to butt. So anything in between there is considered your GI tract. And it could actually be super unpredictable with that plummet of progesterone. So it could be like you're constipated and then all of a sudden you can't stop shitting and you've got diarrhea. So if you've ever had kids and well, you might not remember this because maybe maybe before you had a baby, you didn't have the need to have extreme diarrhea like I did. But I'm getting to TMI here. Maybe before your period, you have so much diarrhea, right? Maybe you're constipated and then you all of a sudden have diarrhea and then it like you get a period the next day. That is from like a rapid drop in progesterone is going to have like the floodgates open there. All right. The other thing that starts to change is the HPA axis. So think of this as your connection to all your hormones. So that is the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenals are all talking to each other. So communication, interpretation, how is everything going? Think of it as like a barometer, if you will, of like what is going on. So when estrogen starts to fall, because again, progesterone starting to fall, then everything on that axis, that is hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, start to get hypersensitive. So think about it as like, oh my God, all the hormones are like, what the fuck is happening right now? What is she doing? What's going on? And that's going to raise your cortisol level. So like baseline cortisol levels start to go up and then everything gets out of whack. Okay. So I've said this before, but think of your HPA axis. I'm going to clear this shit up because if you're like, Elise, you're too fucking confusing, don't change the channel yet. Think of it as a symphony. Okay. We're at a beautiful symphony, but all of a sudden it gets like really cold or the temperature changes and like, the drummer like throws their stick away and the triangle person can't find the triangle thing. It's just like everything becomes a mess. That's what happens when cortisol starts to really rise. So like your baseline cortisol starts to rise because estrogen is dropping and estrogen helps us protect our shit better. Well, literally and figuratively, but like your ability to handle shit changes because you're more reactive. You don't have that stress protection like you used to. So now baseline cortisol raises and then the symphony goes crazy because they're like, oh my God, I don't know where my sticks are. I don't know where the triangle is, and everything starts to go crazy. At this point also is where we start to have low stomach acid. This is very common. This is what I'm struggling with now. I have struggled with this in the past. And with low stomach acid, you're going to experience things like nausea after eating, which is something that I have. You're going to feel super full sometimes after meals. And also, when I'm talking to women and we're talking about gut, I'll say to them, like, do you feel bloated? And the answer is 100% of the time, yes. But I'll say, do you wake up bloated? Because if you wake up bloated, it's different than if you're like, I'm not bloated until I start to eat. So with low stomach acid, you're going to likely feel like you eat a little bit and you are so full. So when someone tells me I just feel full all the time, I'm like, that is a symbol of low stomach acid. And then the actual immune system in the gut starts to change and everything there starts to affect like how permeable the lining is of that whole GI tract. All right. Then there's this other thing that happens because progesterone's falling, which is now we are looking at insulin sensitivity going down, AKA insulin resistance. And I talked about this before. Every woman likes to throw this at me. I'm insulin resistant. And I'm like, congratulations, you're over the age of 40. Of course you are. But if you are like, and I've got a lot of weight and I'm pre-diabetic, then yes, you've got a shitstorm of insulin resistance. But no matter what, as you age, you are going to be less sensitive here, which means insulin resistance is going to come and play a factor. And that has a huge impact on gut dysbiosis. So like the gut is just like, it's just like, peace out, dude. I don't know what the fuck you're doing to me. And then we start looking at inflammation. So inflammation starts to become a huge factor. Think of it as like when you're resistant to insulin, now everything is going to affect you differently. Literally, you're going to be inflamed more and you're not changing anything that you're eating. I want to make that super clear. Then what starts to happen is your sleep can get disrupted because you've got circadian dysregulation because your blood sugars are all over the place. They're not what they used to. And again, just to be clear, nothing's changed yet. So you're just like pulling your hair out because you're like, I don't get what's happening to me. And then with sleep being dysregulated or disrupted, then it's kind of like a chicken or the egg because then it makes leaky gut, dysbiosis, all these things that are happening in the gut, even worse. So if you're not sleeping well, then your gut, it affects your gut even more. So you're like, holy fucking shit, now what? All right. We're not done yet. Buckle up, buttercup. We got one more thing, because guess what else happens in perimenopause? Your thyroid starts to tank. So thyroid dysfunction is so common here. This is why I say to every woman, when you get your labs tested, please have your doctor test more than just your thyroid stimulating factor. You want also and your T4 is, you want your free T3 and T4 as well to be tested. We want and the antibodies. We want the whole thyroid panel done, because when thyroid gets thrown off, so does gut motility. So most women will say to me, I'm constipated a lot. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, and we check their thyroid, and their thyroid has tanked. So we've got constipation, we've got bloating, and this is where we get small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, because the more that we keep literally shit in our system, the more the bacteria, the bad bacteria, starts to grow, and we don't want that either. And then you're going to have even more gas and bloating and fatigue. And then lastly, the other thing that tends to change, and this is where we get more into the habit side of things, is we tend to take more medication. All right. So we are getting older. We have more joints and pains. Maybe you're taking more Advil, more Motrin, and that's going to impair your gut lining. Maybe you're taking protein pump inhibitors. You're taking all these things that are now going to cascade into something else happening. And a lot of women come into the program and they say to me, I just don't want to take any medication. Like, I know what happens. I start taking medication and it's this whole effect. And that is true to a degree, but like, there are some medications that are super important. For example, blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication. Like, we don't want heart attacks, my girl. But then there's others where we're like, yeah, do we need to be pumping in the Advil all the time? Or can we learn and work on mobility a little bit? Can we work on some habit changes here and help it so that we don't have to rely on these medications that are going to then impair an already impaired gut and create more dysbiosis and more discomfort? Okay, that was like 12 minutes of me word vomiting all the gut shit that is literally happening. So what do? This is the fun part of the episode. The first part is understanding that your body has changed, and so you're going to have to change with it. It is the time now to really look at the gut as a priority, because if your gut is not where it needs to be, your immune system will be impaired. You will get sick more, and you won't be as vibrant, have as much vitality, be able to keep up with your joys and all the fun stuff you want to do in your life. So we have to appreciate the fact that our bodies are changing, our physiology is changing, and now is the time to really double down on those habits. We need to make sure that we're having that 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. We need to make sure that we are drinking enough water, that we are staying away from whole foods, that we are having more whole foods, staying away from processed foods, and we are limiting or avoiding alcohol, anything that's going to disrupt that gut. And guess what else really disrupts the gut? Stress. Stress is like the number one killer of the gut. And I know for me, I'm so gut sensitive. I always used to say, if you look at me funny, I'll get a stomach ache. I hold everything in my gut. I've got a lot of trauma that's stored in my gut. So for me, I have to double down on stress management if I want to relax the gut. All right. This also will say, I'll also just remind you that if you're looking for ways of like stress management, we want to look at ways to put our body in a parasympathetic state. In a parasympathetic state, our body will rest and digest. When we're stressed, what happens to the gut? It doesn't digest, because you don't need to be digesting food while you're running away from your life. So if now you understand what is happening in your gut and you're stressed as fuck, now you can't even process the foods in which you're eating. And you're telling me you're eating everything healthy and yet nothing's working, because nothing is actually being absorbed into your body. Okay. So there's a difference between I'm eating it, but the body is not absorbing it. It's not taking it up. Okay, this was a really deep one today, and I apologize if you got a little bit confused here. If you have, go ahead and shoot me a message. I'd love to hear some feedback, and I can get into another episode and answer some more questions on this. Maybe I will even do a live Q&A on my gram where I'll talk a lot more about gut health, but this is something that we really look into as a priority in our program. So when someone comes into the program and they are struggling with gut, any type of gut dysfunction, so like gas, bloating, diarrhea, inflammation, or just like that feeling of full, it's typically a place that we start, right? Because if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to change your physique and you've got some kind of gut dysfunction, which chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you do, then it doesn't really matter what you do because you're not addressing the root issue. And we have to get to that root issue, which is healing the gut. And we can absolutely help with that. And if that's something that you're interested in, again, it is fully customized. We got to do a deep dive on you and your life and what it looks like and what foods you put into your body and how your body responds to stress and what kind of, trauma have you had? So for example, how long were you on the birth control pill for? Did you have any types of disordered eating? What did that look, what you did in your fucking teens, 20s, 30s, it really does matter now for the gut more than anything. And we can help heal that. So if you're looking for more information on that, you can just actually go ahead and shoot me a message on Instagram, heal. And me or a member of my team will just respond out to you and get more information. But if you want to reach me directly, I'll put the links below. And as always, I'm here to help you. So if there's anything I can do or say to make things even clearer, go ahead and let me know. Until the next time.